The elusive trio back together at last. Friday, August 5th, Just Baseball Show. Peter Apple, new apartment. Arm Layton, new haircut. Jack McMullen, newer haircut.
Wow.
Look at this. Look at my sides.
Oh, wow.
I walked out of the barbershop and I immediately opened Snapchat, hit the record button, and then just did a 360 like rotation around the sun around my head. And I think I finished it by saying, this is the greatest haircut I've ever received. How do you feel about yours?
Man, I feel good. I don't put a lot of stock into it, man. I do like a big like walk down. This cool thing about New York City, I walk and first barber shop that sticks out to me gets my business. And as long as you don't screw me up too bad, maybe I'll come back.
I'm
Peter,
the
how do
opposite
you
arm.
approach it?
I'm the opposite arm. I make it a big deal. I send off about 40 snaps, and it's not even the first snap. Like it takes a little bit for me to get a good video, kind of like you, Jack, but I take it to a new level. And no, I can't just walk into the same barbershop. It's got to be exact. But it is funny. At the end of the day, we all get a similar white guy haircut with the short sides, and then they cut a little bit off the top.
Yep.
But for me, it's always felt a little different. It's always felt a little bit better.
Well, you
and
go
I
with the
appreciate it a
swoop.
little bit more. I do the swoop.
No, you push. You have a little bit more working
Some
up top.
product involved.
No product involved.
No product.
That's always been the big thing.
You've got anti-gravity hair?
No, so I just have very thick hair, and this is only water. And next time we're together, run your fingers through my hair and tell me there's product in it. I'm going to see you soon. Run your fingers through my hair. Spend some time doing it. Maybe we can look into each other's eyes and tell me there's product in it.
And the disclaimer is, you guys both have to do this while shirtless, right?
Well, that didn't even need to be said.
All right. Before we get into our big deadline recap, we're going to give grades for all 30 teams. I've got the AL and NL Central. Peter has the AL East and the NL West, and then Arm has the AL West and the NL East. We're also, real quick, at the tail end of this episode, going to walk through our 5 biggest winners of the deadline and our 5 biggest losers of the deadline. But before we do that, this is my first time on the pod with Peter's new backdrop, his studio apartment in Manhattan. Dude was working out of California for the last couple of weeks. Number one, thank God you're not 3 hours behind us anymore. This makes our life so much easier. Number two, tell me about the Shohei Ohtani art that you have in the back for our YouTube folk.
First, thank the good Lord I'm not in California anymore. Not because I don't love California, but just the scheduling with the podcast and being 3 hours behind. I have to wake up at 4:35 in the morning to write those gambling articles before they're out to the public, which made me very tired.
Disclaimer here, you're in the lab before anybody else.
I'm in the lab before anybody else. That's why we're better than everybody else. But we have been on a heater lately. 10-3 in my last 13 picks. I'm going to brag a little bit because I come on when I'm losing and I make a fit. When I'm winning, I'm, of course, going to brag. We're up almost 27 units, but it's not gambling advice. The backdrop, Kyle Taylor, shout out you. I know he listens to the podcast, big fan of the TikTok, made this for me, sent it. It's gorgeous. And I took Shohei Ohtani's pitching prop. That was one of the bets that didn't hit. So maybe it is cursed, but look how gorgeous it is, folks. People on YouTube, thank you for subscribing. If you guys have been enjoying the podcast so far, it's gorgeous. And he's the best player in the world.
Yeah, it looks hot. All right, so Arm, what's your deal? You are moving, so the frames that you never hung up in your apartment will move and could possibly be hung up at the new place.
Yeah, it's actually crazy. I lived my entire lease and did not hang anything up. It's the duality of man here. It's just how I operate. If this camera could go wider, you'd see a disaster of a room. I tick weird. I acknowledge it. But we're gonna hang them up in the next place. We are, because it's just been sitting on the top of my couch, the art behind me. We're gonna hang it up. Dinger is gonna be hung up. Everything's going to be good to go. See, when I moved in here, I don't know. We're working on it. We're working on it.
I understand. So a lot of people have a hot boy summer. Arm's going to have a mentally healthy fall where he actually takes the time to hang up his art.
Yeah. Again, I'm surrounded by clothes right now. I do. It's an obstacle course just to record, and I just refuse to move it as if just something's going to naturally let it happen anyways. But yeah,
But I wonder if it almost benefits Arm. Maybe it puts him like in a state of calm.
It
just
does.
kind of the chaos is almost, in The Big Short where I think it was Steve Carell says, I'm happy when I'm unhappy. I think Aram thrives in a chaotic type environment. Would that be accurate, Arm?
I just think like I don't know. I use brain power on everything but organization. I that's the best way I can describe it.
Shout out your new article too on justbaseball.com, ranking the top 30 prospects that were dealt at the deadline. I just read over it. Phenomenal. So
thank you,
if you're going to do that instead of put up things, I'm all for that. Way over what is behind your backdrop. But also you have the biggest collection of memorabilia, maybe to Darren Ravel, who was on our podcast too. So we would like to see it, but it's not necessary. The prospects are more necessary.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. That was fun to put together.
Yeah, some say Aram ticks weird. Others say he's built different, and I'll go with the latter. So we're going to break into these trade grades for each side. So I'm thinking we can go AL first, east to west, then NL east to west. So it'll be Peter, me, Aram, me, Peter. We'll go serpentine.
Ooh, snake
Peter,
draft.
Yeah, Peter gets the first pick. Naturally, he's going to go with Jonathan Taylor. Who's going to be the first pick in fantasy football this year?
I think it should be
JT.
Jonathan Taylor. Yeah.
Wow,
or
dude.
Is C-Mac, when C-Mac's on the field,
JT.
it's scary. It's got to be JT.
So I full-blown live in Indianapolis now. I might go to multiple Colts games. I'm very excited to see that man do his thing. So should I get a jersey?
I will like to give myself a short plug here before we get into the AL East and all these different divisions. On Not Gambling Advice, I've been doing all of my MLB best bets. During the off season, we're going to be doing football. We made the football TikTok account last year. We're still going to be using Prize Picks for there. Use code JustBaseball if you want to play along with us for some MLB player props, and then that will move forward into the NFL season. So go subscribe to my new podcast, Arms Podcast, The Call Up, and go subscribe to the State of the Division podcast. 6 days a week, 15 minutes on each division. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, thanks a lot. Let's get into it.
Sweet. All right, AL East, start it. So how we're going to do it, Peter, again, assigned AL East and NL West. What he will do is deliver each team, talk about what transactions they made at the deadline, give them a grade, and then if Aram and I have any rebuttal, we will let it be heard, and then we'll move on to the next team.
Let's start with the New York Yankees, and I'm going to give their trade deadline an A. They acquired Andrew Benintendi for 3 minor league pitching prospects. They acquired Frankie Montas and Lou Trevino for Ken Waldichuk. He was the big prospect, but 3 other prospects, including Luis Medina. They also acquired Scott Efros, reliever from the Cubs, for Hayden Wesneski, another right-handed pitching prospect. Another big one, traded Jordan Montgomery to the Cardinals for Harrison Bader and a player to be named later. And they also traded Joey Gallo for Clayton Beeter. When I look at each trade individually, I think they either won or at least got a B on every single trade they did. I don't love Andrew Benintendi as a person, or not as a person.
As a person.
You don't like his vaccination stance?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't care about his vaccination status. What I care about is production on the field. And so far for the Yankees, it hasn't been great. But it's not like the Yankees gave up that much. Beckway was the big one, but he's probably the one who has a shot to be a real big leaguer. But I think the Yankees did well in that situation. They got a good outfielder. That's what they did there. Frankie Montas was another one of the big trades at the deadline, and they got a reliever. And Frankie Montas is going to slide into the 2. And I think they kind of wiped the A's on this one. I mean, I'm going to throw that over to you guys too after I go over all the moves, but I feel like they kind of wiped the A's. Then they got Scott Efros, who has 5 years of control. I wrote an article on justbaseball.com. 5 most underrated pitching or relief pitchers that should be traded at the deadline. He was one of them. He was one of my favorites on that list. And they gave up Hayden Wesneski, who is a very good pitching prospect. But I think there's more of a likely that he'll be a bullpen guy. I'm going to throw that over to Aram as well. But he could be a starter if maybe he figures out a third pitch, or if those 2 pitches, his sinker and a slider, are that good that maybe he could be a back end guy. The Jordan Montgomery trade for Harrison Bader is certainly interesting, but we talked about it on the last podcast. When both sides hate it, normally that's a good trade for both sides. Bader makes a lot of sense for them. You can move Judge over to right field. Bader plays one of the best defensive center fields in baseball, immediately becomes the Yankees' best defender outside of their catcher. And they gave up Jordan Montgomery. And I know Yankee fans don't like that, but at the end of the day, he wasn't going to throw in big time innings for them. And they traded away Joey Gallo for Clayton Beeter, who's an exciting young pitching prospect, most likely a reliever because his walk rate is insane and he rarely knows where it's going. I actually read that off Arm's article, just has no idea where the ball is going, but the stuff is so disgusting that the strikeouts are still there.
Yeah.
And Joey Gallo, needed to be off the Yankees. And I think they actually got a bigger return than I think a lot of people said. Yeah. So I'm giving them a straight up A.
Yeah.
I agree with all of that. I like the breakdown. I think what really puts them over the top is that Montes trade to get Trevino, as you mentioned. And then the fact that, look, I love Waldichuk, and we were talking about it on the call up. Waldichuk was a guy that entering the year, we were one of maybe the only outlet that had him as a top 100 guy. But now I think a lot has changed. If you look at Fangraphs, they've got him, I think, at 35 in their top 100. So the only way I can justify this return is if both teams that in this deal, the Yankees were saying, hey, this is a top 50 prospect you're getting, and the A's agreed. Because otherwise, Medina has started to slow down a little bit right up into this trade. He's putting up almost the same numbers as last year. And then the two other guys, Sears is a reliever. He's fine. And Bowman's kind of a throw-in. So I thought the Yankees made out fantastic on that deal. And that's the big one where you go get an impact starter. I think a big reason why, Jack mentioned this on the call-up as well, a big reason why the return might have been a little bit less than we thought is that maybe more teams are concerned about the shoulder issue for Montes. But this is the kind of deal that even if it worst case scenario blew up in the Yankees' face, you're not losing sleep over what you gave up. I know Waldichuk's great, but the Yankees have a lot better options than that. I think they came out really well and made out really well. And then again, Benintendi, even though he's not off to the best start, again, another one where if it blows up, you're not losing sleep over the three arms you dealt.
Yeah, 100%. And the only thing that I have to add to that is the Jordan Montgomery deal for Bader. And Bader's on the IL, but he's going to come back before the end of the season, it sounds like. Would I prefer to see Jordan Montgomery starting games for the Yankees over Domingo Germán? Yes. Yes, I would. However, I think Peter makes a really good point that Jordan Montgomery was not going to be in the postseason rotation. So if you look at it that way, you had one spare piece to go improve elsewhere, and they did that. So while you do lose 20% of your starting rotation during the regular season, the Yankees are kind of done with the regular season now. Yeah. Like they've already built the capital to coast through the regular season. Now eyes are on the postseason. How do you get better there? You've already got your four starters. Let's go get one of the best defenders in center field that this game has.
And two things to end it. Lou Trevino is very, very interesting because he was a really good reliever for the A's at one point. At one point, exactly. In 2021, he had a 3.18 ERA. In 2020, he had a 3.86 ERA. He's not going to be relied on to be a closer. He's not going to be relied on to be a setup man. He's not even going to be relied on to be a seventh inning guy. But as a guy who's been in high leverage situations before and has performed well, not this year, but this feels like a guy that the Yankees are going to take in the offseason because he has another year of control, fix a couple of things, and get him back to the mid threes where he can be a really solid reliever. So that's another good throw in, I think. I don't think he's over the hill now at 30 years old. I think he's better than what he's shown with the A's this year.
And the peripherals are pretty good, like compared to what we're really seeing here. So there's definitely room for some hope. And like Peter said, I mean, the Yankees have done a great job of maximizing their relievers. And we know that Trevino has the talent to be good. The last thing I'll say too is Aaron Hicks has been horrible. So, not only do you not think that like Jay Mont's going to be getting postseason innings, I don't want Aaron Hicks in the lineup in the postseason.
He's a fourth outfielder at this point.
And Bader's way better. I mean, Bader, if he gives you a 110 WRC plus, the defense is even going to be, right there too. And he brings a lot more to the table, has another year of control. I really like the move from that lens. We'll see who the player to be named later is and what caliber prospect it is, but they are getting something else also in the return. So that is worth noting. I thought the Yankees did really well overall. And the biggest thing, the last thing I'll add is they didn't really part with any blue chippers other than Ken Waldichuk. They hold on to, of course, Volpe, but to hold on to Peraza as well. I would have put a lot of money on that guy being gone. Right,
like the Martian's name, Dick.
Oh, and him too. But
who's been better?
He has been better. He has been better. I would have put a lot of money on Peraza being gone, given his proximity, given the defense at shortstop, the probability being a big leaguer. And they hold on to him. Good stuff for the Yanks.
Let's move on to the Blue Jays. I'm giving the Toronto Blue Jays a C+ at the deadline. They acquired Zach Pop and Anthony Bass, and a player to be named later from the Marlins for Jordan Groshans, who's a good shortstop prospect. We'll talk about him a little bit later. I'm sure Arm has some choice words for him. They also acquired Whit Merrifield from the Royals for Samad Taylor and right-handed pitcher Max Castillo, both prospects. They also acquired Mitch White at the deadline for Alex DeJesus from the Dodgers, and Alex DeJesus from the Dodgers for 2 pitchers that honestly I don't really know that much about, so I'm going to have to throw that over to you guys as well. And they also traded Jeremy Beasley to the Pirates for cash considerations. The reason I'm giving the Blue Jays a C+ is it's not a C because they did get better, but I think there were certain needs that the Blue Jays needed to go get that they didn't. We talked about a left-handed bat. It's not that important because the Blue Jays are so good, but there will be situations in the playoffs where you have very, very good right-handed pitchers going up against a very right-handed dominant lineup that could end up shutting them down. The Blue Jays bullpen got better, but it still didn't get elite because I don't know how good Tony Bass truly will be with the Blue Jays. I liked the Whit Merrifield, but I also really liked the package for the Royals in return for Whit Merrifield. Whit Merrifield also, his vaccination status is still up in the air. Will he be more of a, I don't know, like a road
Kyrie Irving?
Is he a road?
Yeah,
Is he Kyrie Irving?
Yeah, like
Is
a
he
road player
Kyrie?
for them. I mean, I hope he can play in Toronto, but with the vaccination status, he said that he was open to getting the vaccine if he went to a contender, but it still isn't confirmed yet. I think the Blue Jays could have done a lot better, and they didn't do a lot, but they also didn't get worse. That's why I gave them a C+. What do you guys, Jack, what do you think when I say C+?
I drop them to a C because the day after I read that the Blue Jays are leaving Whit Merrifield's vax decision up to him.
Yep.
Versus if they said, hey, Whit, go get vaxxed and you can play every game, he would say, okay. He already said okay like 2 weeks ago. He said, if a team wants me to get vaccinated and I'm going to a contender, I'm open to getting vaccinated.
And he's
so
also
just tell him to go get vaxxed. Like, that's it. Go tell him that he can play every day with half your schedule remaining. He is going to miss a month of the next 2 months because you put the ball in his court.
I think he gets it done. I think he gets it done. And
I hope he gets it done.
You know why?
He's an idiot if he doesn't.
Yeah, especially because then he should have just said, hey, I'm not getting vaxxed. And then, you don't get traded and you can keep playing ball. So here's the thing. He's hitting well. And I feel like he wants to keep that momentum going, right? Are you like, if he's only playing half the games, it's impossible to stay right during that. Over his last 30 games, 265, 328, 444 slash line. That's a 118 WRC plus with 3 home runs and 7 stolen bases. That's what you were hoping that Whit Merrifield would bring you. I mean, even if he's not playing to the level that he was playing a couple of years ago, if you're getting that from Whit Merrifield with the positional versatility, this is a C+ at the very least for me. Mitch White is a good depth arm. They really need that to get through the regular season. Again, not a guy I trust in the postseason, but he can spot start for you. He can help you. They really need guys to help them get through that rotation right now. I thought they did all right. I think they're better off, and I think a C+ is fair.
Thing is with the Blue Jays, just to wrap up on them too, they needed Montes. They needed Castillo. There's some of these teams that didn't absolutely, like the Yankees didn't really need Montes, but they went out and got him. And the Yankees kind of fleeced in that deal. So I'm looking at the Blue Jays, looking at their prospects, who they could have delivered to get a Frankie Montes. They probably could have given a better package for him. And then what they did was they traded to Jordan Groshans, who is available on a lot of top 100 prospects lists. We're a little bit more down on him, so maybe that was a good trade for, but they only cashed in for 2 relievers when they really need the starters. And there were so many other relievers on the market. Like, do you trade Jordan Groshans? Like, is Zach Pop really that guy? Trade 2 lesser prospects for Anthony Bass. Then I just felt they could have been a little bit more. What's the word?
I know what you're saying. They could have been better with their resources.
Yes,
right?
they could have been better with their resources. But they didn't get worse. They didn't have a bad deadline. They just didn't have a good one.
Peter makes a good point because, like, if you package, let's say, Groshans with a couple other top 10 prospects, maybe they get an arm. Maybe they get even a Jose Quintana, right? Like, I'd rather package Groshans with somebody for Quintana better off than what they have right now. So no, I agree, and that's what kind of keeps them out of the B territory. or even the B- territory, but they did get better. So C is status quo. They squeeze out the C+.
That's what I agree with. All right, let's move on to the Rays. I would give the Tampa Bay Rays a B- at the deadline. They traded and acquired, or their trades were, they acquired David Peralta from the Diamondbacks for rookie, or he's more of a prospect, Christian Cerda. They acquired Garrett Clevenger from the Dodgers for an outfielder. German Tapia, I don't really know much about him either.
Herman, man, he's Latin.
Herman Tapia, that's something I'll need to throw over to you guys. They acquired Jose Siri in that 3-team trade, but they gave up Brett Phillips, and they gave up Seth Johnson to the Orioles and Jaden Murray, who Seth Johnson is actually a pretty good pitching prospect. And they traded Brett Phillips to the Orioles for cash. I like the David Peralta move. And I gave them a B- because I agree. I think they got better. And I didn't see a trade in there where I'm like, oh, you lost that one. The only reason it's not a B is because Seth Johnson looks pretty good. I know he's going to have Tommy John surgery, but was he really worth it to give up in that deal? You got Jose Siri, which is an upgrade, and maybe they unlock something in Jose Siri because he's crazy, crazy talented, but it's not a Jose Siri coming over from the Rockies or the Diamondbacks. It's Jose Siri coming over from the Astros. If the Astros couldn't figure out how to fully unlock him, I'm not sure that he goes over to the Rays and then gets fully unlocked there. I'm just looking at team-to-team type proposals there. And they got rid of Brett Phillips. They didn't really get much for him. They just got cash. But how much can you really get for Brett Phillips at this point? But they really didn't get anything. I felt that they could have maybe gotten something. So I gave them a B-. They didn't do much. I like the Peralta deal. What do you guys think?
Jack, this is your guy. You go ahead.
Yeah. So when Jesus Christ did die, he said, "I will be reincarnated, and the Messiah will return." The Messiah is the new center fielder, possibly in a platoon role for the Tampa Bay Rays, and Jose Siri.
Platoon role.
This guy has more talent in his pinky finger than us three combined on this podcast. He's a freak show. He's one of the fastest guys in baseball. He's one of the best defensive center fielders in baseball, and he hits the shit out of the ball. Problem is, he doesn't make contact off that's a big bugaboo for me. I think Jose Siri can be that guy where Tampa is playing impactful baseball at the end of September. And it's like, wow, Jose Siri has a 1,000 OPS over the last 20 games.
Yeah.
Because that's what Tampa does with guys like Jose Siri. So I thought it was a good one. I'm with you, Peter. I like the David Peralta move for them. I think the Peralta is going to be a really solid bat for Tampa. And they need bats while everybody is hurt. I don't know how this pitching staff survives. I will say that, but
I totally agree with you. They needed to add a little bit more pitching, and they didn't really do it.
Yeah, it's funny too because they traded Jaden Murray, who I think could have potentially filled in some innings down the stretch here. Taj Bradley's going to probably end up getting called up sometime soon.
Crazy.
Their top pitching prospect has been dynamite and continues to carve and triple. Johnson makes sense. If he doesn't get Tommy John, he's not dealt here. He is really good. Former first-round pick, was looking fantastic this year before going down with the elbow injury. Series tied for the league lead in the outfield for outs above average. So you basically replace Brett Phillips defensively with way more offensive upside.
With the Messiah, say it.
Yes, with the Messiah stamp. And Peralta, look, he's not going to win you a series by himself, but he is steady. He's going to give you slightly above average offense, at the very worst average offense, which they're not getting out of the outfield. So I liked what they Rays did. It was true Rays fashion. They didn't give up a ton other than Seth Johnson. And I think they did pretty well. I would say C+, B- works for me.
You know what, Arm, I was kind of looking at? The Seth Johnson move somewhat reminds me of the Joe Ryan move for Nelson Cruz. Yeah, that could bite him in the butt again. And I'm actually surprised that they decided to deal him. But to your point, Tommy John surgery is going to hold him out all
next year.
Yeah. So he's not going to be factored in the plans. But then for the Orioles, who we could start talking about now, the Baltimore Orioles, I'm going to give their trade deadline a B- as well. So what they did, they traded Trey Mancini to the Astros in that 3-team deal. We went over all of it. And they got Seth Johnson and they got Chase McDermott from the Astros. They traded Jorge Lopez to the Twins and they got they were all pitching prospects. It's good. They got a ton of arms there. And then they acquired Brett Phillips for cash. The reason being I'm giving them a B- is I think they understood the window is not open quite yet. So, and Trey Mancini probably doesn't factor into their future plans. Another reason I gave them a B- is I do like the Seth Johnson pickup, but I didn't love the Jorge Lopez trade. And we talked about it before. It's not that they did badly in that, because they needed depth in their system in terms of arms. But I felt that you could have gotten one or two good or to great prospects for a Jorge Lopez because of how dominant he's been, instead of moving for depth. Because I look at the Orioles system right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Arm Jack, but it seems like there's so many prospects in that system already. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they really do need a bunch of arms, but I would rather one or two really good arms, because we have Grayson coming up, we have DL Hall coming up, and a lot of the pitchers in their rotation right now are on the younger side. And then they got Brett Phillips for basically nothing. So I gave them a B-, and I think you could even argue they got a B. I think they had a pretty solid deadline.
So that's the big problem, though. You mentioned Grayson and DL Hall. Name another. They're not there. So it's Grayson and it's DL Hall. Kyle Bradish can be good. Haven't seen a good Kyle Bradish yet this year. We've seen flashes of a good Kyle Bradish. We've seen what Tyler Wells can do. Tyler Wells can be a pitcher for them, but you need one more to make a 5-man rotation. And the thing about prospects is usually they don't pan out, even if they're really good prospects. They usually don't pan out. So I really like the Lopez move in particular for Cade Povich, who is very solid. And I know that Aram could speak a little bit more towards Cade Povich, but Yeiner Cano is another back-end bullpen type guy. I think Juan Nunez and Juan Rojas, those are both guys that can be relievers. Chase McDermott, if he figures out how to throw strikes, the fastball slider is nice. And Seth Johnson after TJ is really good. So I like the fact that they emphasized quantity of good over quality of great.
Well, and I'll say this, the Orioles have developed relievers really well as of late, right? I mean, we look at like Felix Bautista and just some of the other arms. I mean, they even go and package Cole Sulser and Tanner Scott over to the Marlins for a draft pick and other prospects. Like they seem to do something well in terms of, identifying and developing relievers. And I think this was them saying, hey, we can do this again. We'll find another Jorge Lopez. And whether they will or won't, well, time will tell. But if they do end up identifying guys and develop other pieces like a Jorge Lopez, then they did great, because that's found money basically. And Seth Johnson could be a middle of the rotation arm for them, though you're going to have to be patient. McDermott has some of the best stuff, like Jack said, just really, really wild right now. And Povich is a good lefty that he made the 30th. So he was 30th on our top 30 prospects that were traded. Just for context, Seth Johnson was 17 and McDermott was in the 22. So they got 3 of the top 30 prospects, and all they really traded was an expiring Trey Mancini and a reliever. They're still pretty decent. They still can try to give it a go. I think I agree with that grade overall.
Okay, so B-. I guess I thought that they could have gotten maybe a Seth Johnson-esque type player, maybe even better than him in a deal, as well as maybe then one more arm instead of 4 arms where you hope one becomes a big leaguer. But Jack, to your point, you're right. I mean, they are prospects at the end of the day. Like, I could say that getting more is often better than one, but I just do feel that Jorge Lopez could have gotten more because he was one of the best relievers at this deadline.
Yes, he was. But again, relievers are just so fleeting. Like, we have no idea what Jorge Lopez is going to look like next year. That's the thing about starting pitchers, right? Because you see a breakout and the sample size is so much larger than a bullpen arm, where you can start to take some things away. You can actually place a rhyme or reason behind their pitch usage, or, what they're doing over the course of a start. Versus relievers, you got 30 good innings, you're getting Hayden Wesneski in return. Like, that's that type of thing that we're seeing with relievers. So
I just think Jorge Lopez was so nasty. But let's move on to the team that probably had the weirdest deadline out of any team. But weird doesn't necessarily mean bad. It means weird. I'm giving the Boston Red Sox a C-.
Woo!
They traded Christian Vasquez to the Astros for Emmanuel Valdez and Wilyer Abreu. They acquired Tommy Pham from the Reds for, we still have no idea, as a player to be named later. They acquired, well, that technically is the same thing. They acquired Eric Hosmer and Max Ferguson and Corey Rozier in cash considerations from the Padres for a lefty, Jay Groom, who was one of their better pitching prospects. And they traded Jake Diekman, a lefty reliever, to the White Sox for catcher Reese McGuire and a player to be named later. And Reese McGuire definitely has an interesting backstory.
Google it. Just Google Reese
McGuire news
parking lot. Yeah, just Google Reese McGuire parking lot and let them know that the Just Baseball Show sent you.
Yeah, you'll see what
Don't do it before 11 p.m. though. So we adhere to FCC guidelines.
Do it midday in your office.
Yes.
If it's 2 p.m. Your bosses, just search up Reese McGuire parking
and
lot.
Watch the local news story on loudest
on
volume
full volume.
Can. Yeah.
So the reason I came to a C- conclusion is I look at the Red Sox and I think to myself first, are they better than they were before the deadline? Jack is shaking his head no. Aram is kind of in between. I'm saying yes.
I think they're slightly better.
Tommy Pham is now their best outfielder, which is kind of hilarious. You could say Alex Verdugo, of course. Alex Verdugo is a better player than Tommy Pham, but he hasn't performed better than Tommy Pham this season. Jackie Bradley Jr., DFA'd. Nice trade there for Hunter Renfroe. Go check out that article on justbaseball.com.
A lot of people have been.
I know. Between Hunter Renfroe and
I don't
Jackie
think we
Bradley
have to plug
Jr.
it anymore.
I don't think we have to either. It's one of the most famous articles on our site now. They traded away Christian Vasquez. But Christian Vasquez made some comments about Heim Bloom, and now Heim Bloom is out. Jack, I heard you talking about that on the podcast. Jake Diekman for Reese McGuire. Diekman has not performed well for them, and they filled their catching need. It was a fine move there. The Red Sox could have done a lot more. They could have traded JD Martinez, who doesn't look like he's on the way out, but it does look like recently that he's been swinging with an injury. They maybe could have tested the market, gotten a ton for Xander Bogaerts. They decided to keep him, decided to keep Devers. Now the question is, will they pay these players? I'm thinking that they won't end up paying these players. So I give them a C- because I think it was the weirdest soft buy of all time.
Yeah. I think they're better from the respect that first base was a gaping hole for them. I think they were hoping Casas would fill in or that Dalbec wouldn't fall flat on his face this year. And Casas has been banged up. He'll be good. He'll be up at some point, maybe hopefully end of this year, early next year. Dalbec is just not the guy. Hosmer is going to give you good defense at first, at least, and at least give you like a 100 WRC plus. Here's the thing: this is what it boils down to, and this is why the Tommy Pham edition actually helps them. There's 5 or 6 outfields with a sub 1 F-WAR combined. That's your whole outfield. You have the Miami Marlins at 0.9 F-WAR. You have the Colorado Rockies at 0.7 F-WAR. You have the Phillies at 0.7, the Reds at 0.6, the Red Sox at 0.3, and the Tigers at negative 1.4. By F-WAR, the Red Sox have the second worst outfield in baseball and an 83 WRC plus. Tommy Pham is better than that by himself. So that is the good news. He's going to help them there, and Hosmer is going to give them more than what they got at the first base position. They have the worst first base defense and not great offense from there either. But they really don't have any direction, and they're kind of just I don't know what they're doing. Are they going to recoup a compensation pick for JD? Are they going to do the same with Xander? Are they going to extend one of them, both of them? What's the plan? This deadline didn't give us any indication. If anything, the deadline just told us that they have no idea what the plan is still moving forward. And 3 games out of the wild card, they decided to soft buy, like Peter said.
Jack, before you continue, I just want to put the WAR into context for a second. Can you go over those WAR totals again? Because I want to compare that to one certain player just to put into context how much WAR they've actually accumulated by all of their outfielders this season.
So the whole Boston Red Sox outfield has accumulated a 0.3 F-WAR.
Isaiah Kiner-Falefa has a 0.7 F-WAR. Gio Urshela on the Twins has a 0.6 F-WAR. Nathaniel Lowe, 0.5 F-WAR.
Yeah, Brandon Lowe, Nathaniel Lowe.
Connor Joe, our king, has a 0.4 F-WAR. So their whole outfield has been A little worse than all of Connor Joe.
So they got Tommy Pham.
And they got Tommy Pham was a 0-7 F4.
Yeah, there you go. What's crazy is they're 3 games out of a playoff spot. If Eovaldi can start throwing for them, if Sale can come back, like they could give it a little push, I guess.
Yeah, I ain't counting them out, but I'm also not counting them in either.
Yeah, I don't know I guess they did what they had to do, which was just not much.
Jack, you got anything before you get into the Centrals?
Yeah, sure. Aram, what's the line about Billy Hamilton? He was so fast, but what base can you not steal?
Can't steal first.
Can't steal first base. Okay, so the guys that they got with Eric Hosmer, Max Ferguson and Corey Rozier, this is now the organization that employs Corey Rozier, Max Ferguson, and David Hamilton, 3 of the fastest guys in professional baseball. But they all have one thing in common. They can't steal first base.
Yeah.
They're all hitting very low 200s. So Chaim Bloom likes fast guys. He doesn't like guys that get on base. I really only have one thing to say about the Vasquez thing, and that's he shit on Chaim Bloom. Chaim Bloom shipped him out of town. The entire clubhouse hated that. There's just a fundamental disconnect.
Yeah, while they were playing the Astros. What I will say, though, is I did like the 2 prospects they got for what that's worth. Both make the top 30 prospects acquired at our deadline. That was one that I thought was not bad for them. Wilyer Abreu is toolsy, exciting, some power, some speed. And then Emmanuel Valdez has been raking and could be a big league infield bat for them. So at least they did all pretty well on that trade.
Yeah. I mean, I just think Chaim Bloom and John Henry have only soured the relationship between what goes on upstairs and what goes on the field.
I think that's
fair.
I
think that's killer. And I think that this deadline put the nail in the coffin.
Gold bottles.
Gold bottles.
Gold bottles. All right, Central. The AL East was probably the most intriguing division at the deadline. So we spent, I want to say, like 30 minutes on that. We might spend 7 minutes on the AL Central. The Twins. I will give the Minnesota Twins an A. I think that the Twins did exactly what they needed to put this division out of reach. They acquired Tyler Mahle for Spencer Steer, Christian Encarnacion Strand, who has uber power. And for a breakdown on those guys, head over to the call-up. Arm and I just talked about him this morning. And Steve Hadger. They acquired Jorge Lopez, like you mentioned, for Yainer Cano, Cade Povich, Juan Rojas, Juan Nunez. They also got Michael Fulmer for Sawyer Gibson Long, who is just a flyer arm. They added a 2. They added a closer to push Yohan Duran to a setup role, and they added a 7th inning reliever. That's exactly what Minnesota needed. They hit all 3 of their primary concerns. That's why they get an A.
I agree. And they also held on to all of their blue chippers. Miranda. They hold on to Kirilloff, Wallner, Larnick. The only guy that maybe borderline blue chipper is Steer, and you're okay parting with him because he's blocked right now. So yeah. I like that. I like what they did.
I agree. I think the only thing keeping them from an A+ maybe was they did give up a lot for Tyler Mahle, but they did exactly what they needed to do. And they distanced themselves from the Guardians and the White Sox. And we're going to talk losers later, and you can bet your ass they're on there. So combined with what they did at the deadline compared to what they did to their competitors, they killed this.
The Guardians acquired Ian Hamilton for Sandy Leon. D-.
F.
What did... Fuck you, Guardians. Like, are you serious? You could have gotten Sean Murphy. You could have done so much more. You're right there. And what do? Big fat nothing.
The only reason I say D- and not F is because they have the best system in baseball and they didn't give any of those prospects away.
Sure, but why not?
Yeah, why not?
I don't know. They might think that they're a year ahead of their window.
They're never going to have a window
they're
if they
one
don't
game
buy
back.
anything.
They're 1 game back. I mean, and the Twins have never proven to be able to be there, right? Like they've always seemed to kind of fizzle out either in the first round or towards the end of the season. Like, why not give it a go? It's frustrating, but yeah, I'm going to give them an F.
Yeah.
The White Sox acquired. Yeah, there we go. The White Sox acquired Jake Diekman for Reese McGuire. F. F stands for fuck you, White Sox.
I'm not even going to say fuck you. I'm just going to laugh at you, Chicago. You know what? Deep dish pizza, overrated. Hot dogs, they suck. Chicago, you ruined everything. You could have done something. You decided to just stand pat. And the comments from Rick Hahn were so embarrassing.
Yeah, Jack, can you talk about the comments from Rick Hahn?
Yeah, I was actually looking at the red button in the bottom right corner of the Zoom, but it says "and did not leave." I forgot that I was the host. I would have left the meeting after Peter said those things about the hot dogs and the pizza, but
they did it. They did it to themselves.
Rick Hahn had media availability on Tuesday night. Quote, "We're disappointed we weren't able to do more to improve this club. We weren't able to line up on targets. Anyone out there upset we didn't get that done, I'm with you. We still very much believe in this club and that they have championship potential."
It's a genius play, actually, pretending like it's not all in your control.
No, he was just like, "It's on me, guys. I'm sorry." Yeah, it's on you. Yes.
No, he didn't even really say it was on me. He just kind of said, "I'm disappointed it didn't happen." Like, it's if I rear end somebody, just be like, disappointed the brakes didn't kick in time. It just is what it is. I was hoping we'd stop. I was hoping we'd stop in time, but we didn't. And it wasn't because I didn't actually hit the brakes with enough time to be able to stop. It was up to Rick Hahn. If he really wanted to make a move, he could have. He didn't. White Sox are in trouble. They better get healthy quick.
At least sell. You have one of the worst farm systems in baseball. At least sell. Just did nothing. What an embarrassment.
Do you want to know the state of Chicago baseball? You've got Rick Hahn saying that, and then this morning you've got Jed Hoyer saying that he called the Angels front office to check in on Shohei Ohtani. That's great. That's awesome. How'd that call go?
Yeah, you do your job.
Yeah, Perry say nice things to you.
How's Shohei
love
doing?
You when he hung up?
I mean,
how's Shohei?
He's doing well. All right, cool. Just wanted to know.
Just wanted to make sure I got the tweet out that I did one call this break. Yeah. Click.
Boom.
Yeah, I can see him kicking his feet up and like cracking open a beer, and he's like, "I earned this."
See, I love ridiculous. I love in the AL East, we like really got into it because there was a ton of moves done in that division. And to your point, Jack, AL East just much more riveting. And then we move into the Central, and it's like this team did one thing.
Yeah,
they almost talking about a player.
The Tigers did two things. They traded Michael Fulmer to Minnesota for Sawyer Gipson-Long, and they traded Robbie Grossman to Atlanta for Chris Englund. What?
They lost both trades.
Who knows what Sawyer Gipson-Long is going to be?
I think you gave up the two guys. Maybe you should have kept it. I think you maybe should have shipped out everybody else. Seems like Fulmer seems to be one of the best arms in that bullpen. And Robbie Grossman,
sold well on Grossman.
Is one of the most underrated additions at this deadline. I think the Braves basically just stole him. I think he's going to be great for Atlanta. In his first game, he had a double there too. What are we doing here, Tigers? You had all the opportunity in the world to sell off everything. You said you were listening on everyone. You didn't really listen, of course. You probably just pretended you were listening. Tarek Skubal stuff. I mean, Soto,
which is bizarre. Yeah.
Nathan, Jimenez, Jamer Candelario. I mean, you could have done so much and you did absolutely nothing. F, D, whatever. Doesn't matter.
Whatever. A failing grade. That's fine with me.
We'll say D- to be nice. The Royals, I gave them a C. They traded Whit Merrifield to Toronto for Castillo and Samad Taylor. They acquired Brent Rooker from San Diego for Cam Gallagher. That was just kind of a meh move. They did acquire Luke Weaver for Emmanuel Rivera, who I think is like a pretty decent high 20s AAA guy. Like I think he can be a quadruple A player for them and keeps on bouncing between Reno and Arizona. They acquired Anthony Misevitz for cash. Bullpen arm. And then they traded Benny for Beckway, TJ Sakema, and Chandler Champlain. We talked about it. They probably could have done better for Benintendi. But adding three arms, I'll take three good over one great for sure in the Royals case because they have zero. Literally zero.
Yeah. And the greats have not developed for them. So throw more irons in the fire.
Yeah. So I think they did enough. I think they stayed on course with what they wanted to do after this year has been wildly disappointing. So C, they stand pat.
See, and I really like that they cleared Carlos Santana out. I liked that move more for the Mariners, but I'm glad that they cleared way for the younger guys. That's something I'm glad. We saw Pascantino, we've seen Nick Prado up there. The young guys are getting run. That's very encouraging.
You see Massey just got selected again.
Massey's up there. That's how it should be. They should have traded Whit Merrifield 2 years ago, but the Royals are similar to the Rockies in the respect that they love being loyal. And unfortunately, they sell a little bit lower, but they did get two guys I don't mind. And Samad Taylor could go straight to the big leagues for them pretty soon. And he's kind of a Whit Merrifield light, second base / outfield, good speed, good bat to ball. So we'll see how he develops.
Yep.
The Royals
AL
at
West.
least seem to have a direction.
They were active at least.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Have
they
direction.
moved pieces that they didn't need anymore.
They participated.
Yeah. All right. AL West.
That's me.
That is
I get the Serpentine. I got back-to-back picks. Okay, so I'll start with the West, obviously. We'll go with the easy A, Seattle Mariners. I mean, the Mariners, they gave up a pretty penny for somebody like Luis Castillo, but that's an A for me. Anytime you get a frontline starter, you got to feel pretty good about what the Mariners did. And I mean, they just, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe how excited the Mariners have got me. But the full trade breakdown is Luis Castillo for Noelvi Marte, Edwin Arroyo, Levi Stout, and Andrew Moore. Noelvi Marte is a top 25 prospect in baseball. Edwin Arroyo will be a top 100 guy in our midseason update. Levi Stout just shoved a right-handed pitcher, made his AA debut, and Andrew Moore is probably going to be a reliever. It's a lot. But you know what? The Mariners are trying to make the playoffs for the first time in 20 years. Love that move. They go get Carlos Santana, gives them some important depth. That was a little bit before the deadline. They give up 2 flyer arms for him. He has been a good fill-in. They also traded away Anthony. You said it better than me. Mishevich. They also get Matthew Boyd and Kurt Casale, 2 pieces that I think are good vets that should be able to help them and give them some depth. And then a couple other smaller moves. They also get Jake Lamb from the Dodgers for a player to be named later. It's an A for me because you get an ace or at least a really high-end number 2. You get some depth. You get some other pieces, and they're ready to go all in. And I'm here for that.
I have a question. Would the Mariners get an A if they didn't have a 20-year playoff drought? Because I think each individual move, are they an A? Or is it an A because they needed to do this and they did it? I would give them an A too. I don't think that's a bad grade because of that. I'm just curious, if you look at each move, do they get an A? Because it was an overpay for Luis Castillo. I think that's clear. You know, they gave up Noelvi Marte. They gave up Arroyo. It was a lot for him. But I still think they had a great deadline. I'm just curious on that.
Best arm on the market, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's expensive. You're getting a guy with a 286, right?
He's dirty.
I think it's an A because they pushed the chips forward and they paid the premium that it cost to get a Castillo. If they let it whittle down to the deadline, maybe someone swoops in and beats them. You know, they did what it took to get that trade done before it was up against the clock. I liked the other moves that they made. I think Casale's a great backup as well. He's actually swung it really well this year and is a great defender. I like the small moves they made. And then, of course, the big splash. Of course, they gave up a lot, but you got to give to get. I'm here for it. I think they're an A.
Oh, I'm not taking anything away from them. I am here for it. I would give them an A. They put themselves in playoff contention. I just kind of wanted to throw that out there because I don't think that's ever talked about. Like, if they weren't in this playoff drought, would each individual move result in an A grade?
It's hard to take those glasses off.
I know.
Because we look at all these teams, relatively speaking, like we look at market size when we talk about these deals. You know, when we talk about Milwaukee, we're going to have to look at market size. We're going to have to look at what Hader's contract situation would have been like. So I think with Seattle, like, I don't think you can have this deadline conversation taking a 20-year playoff drought out of the equation because it's so much of the equation.
That's absolutely fair.
Next team.
Just haven't heard it, you know? We're just fishing.
I understand. Are you fishing for takes?
Yeah. Give me a hot one.
He's got a take. He's got one on the line. Houston Astros. They're going to check in with an A-. They go out and they get Trey Mancini, who I absolutely love how he fits in. Mancini, they had to part with a couple other pieces. They do trade Jose Siri. They do trade Chase McDermott and part of a 3-team trade there that we already touched on. They also swapped Jake Odorizzi for Will Smith. Will Smith fits right into their bullpen and helps them out there. They go out and get Christian Vasquez, a huge get for them because Martin Maldonado, great defender, but my goodness, if you're getting a pitcher's level of production from the catching position at some point, it kind of hurts. And then also made some moves earlier in the season. But I loved all of the moves that they made. I think Mancini and Vasquez put that offense in a point where you can't really poke a hole in it. 1 through 9, when those guys are in the lineup, there's really nobody that you have a break from. Every guy is an above average offensive piece. And other than Jose Siri, which again, they're pretty fine in the outfield, they don't need him, especially with Jake Myers and Chas McCormick. They didn't give up much. They gave up Emmanuel Valdez and Wilyer Abreu, two solid prospects who I do like, but for your starting catcher for the rest of the season, no brainer. The Astros are now as complete of a team as they could be. And I think it's really hard to poke a hole in this ball club.
Yeah, when Jose Siri has a 60-60 season next year and Jake Myers doesn't do anything, let's revisit this A-.
Yes,
pal.
we can.
I did some soul searching.
On Siri?
No, not on the Messiah, even though that kind of makes sense with the spiritual aspect of Jose Siri.
Yeah.
No, I did some soul searching on who's better, Yankees or Astros.
Yeah.
Arm, who do you think?
Well, if Garrett Cole keeps looking like that, it's the Astros, man.
Yeah. Fuck. Yeah. He's not my Wi-Fi password anymore. I think the Astros are better.
Welcome to the club, brother.
I think if Bader's healthy and fully good to go in September, then it's a different story. Because again, we're talking about being able to poke a hole. Right now, the Yankees have a big hole in center field.
Here's my thing. I think it's going game 7, and it's Verlander Cole. Who's winning?
I'm putting my life on Verlander.
Yes,
exactly.
Especially if the game starts 2 minutes late. Yeah,
I think the Yankees got it to a game 7, but they're going to lose in game 7 if that's the pitching matchup. And you just go through more of the pitchers. I mean, we throw Valdez in there. They're going to get back Lance McCullers Jr. soon. Even Luis Garcia, Christian Javier is literally the Yankees' father. That's going to be very challenging.
Next team, probably the most aggravating team out there. The LA Angels, they get a fat D from me. And here's why. Well, let's go through the moves first. LA Angels get a D. Traded for Logan O'Hoppe. They had to part with their starting outfielder, Brandon Marsh, to do so. 24-year-old who has struggled, but O'Hoppe could be their starting catcher. Don't hate that move as much. Part with the recently signed or extended Raisel Iglesias. They get Jesse Chavez and friend of the show, Tucker Davidson. Then they trade Noah Syndergaard for Mickey Moniak, who I would presume will replace Brandon Marsh in the outfield. Ouch. And then they also acquired Tuki Toussaint for cash considerations. They get a D because ultimately, I don't know if I would have sold low on Marsh. He's 24 years old. And honestly, you're not in a point to really be trading away outfielders. You don't know what Mike Trout's situation is. You don't really know what your other offensive prospects look like at all. They don't really look good at all. And yes, sure, you get a catcher in Logan O'Hoppe, but also parting with Raisel Iglesias, where I think they're selling as low as possible. Noah Syndergaard to not go. I would have rather had a lottery ticket than Mickey Moniak. I just don't like the moves that they made. They've been in a perpetual disappointment, and the deadline didn't make me feel any better about them than we did before. And you can't really give them a better grade than a D.
They got a D for dickheads. And you know why? They didn't rebuild. Like, I don't think they did a great job rebuilding at this deadline, and they certainly didn't buy. So they got worse, and they didn't really upgrade this farm system for the type of players that they sent off. I like Tucker. Tucker's probably going to be the 5 starter for them. He's been performing in the minor leagues. He even pitched in the World Series. I like that move. But Raisel Iglesias is a freaking stud. Yeah. He's a stud. Went on. He's one of the best relievers in baseball. We saw the package for Hader, and then for Raisel Iglesias, like Jesse Chavez, are you kidding me? What is he going to do for you? Nothing.
He's just traded again.
Yeah, I mean, like he's going to, exactly. He's going to trade him again. You go through each move. I like Logan O'Hoppe. I think that's a good one, but they gave up Brandon Marsh, who has a ton of potential there. So it makes sense that they would get a Logan O'Hoppe. They did not do well, and I even think you could give them a D-, Arm. I think you were actually kind of nice.
The system isn't better, and the team is worse. So what did they achieve?
Yeah. What do you think, Jack?
Is
that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, like we gave him an A+ in the offseason, and here we are getting a D at the deadline. Like,
yeah, but we're gonna be on him next year, though. Mike Trout, Shohei,
dude, I'm all the way back. I might be back on the bus like now. I might be ready. Play stress-free baseball, get the good vibes going into the offseason, kill it again in the offseason. You know what? Trade for Raisel Iglesias back.
I'm still sitting on this dumbass ticket on their over win total. Ugh.
Oh, maybe you
Might
could
as well
sell it
just
for like $2.
I just went to Vegas and said, "Here, take my money."
I don't want
Vegas
to
said,
bet
"Do you
back.
want to bet on anything?" I'm like, "No, just have it."
Just
That's
have it.
from a Family Guy episode where Peter Griffin goes in.
Oh yeah,
And he just hands them money. He's like, "What do you want to bet on today?" "Oh, nothing. Just have it." That's exactly what I did with the Angels over win total.
Man, yeah, you could probably sell it to Rovell and he would frame it.
yeah.
Peter's biggest L.
Yeah, Peter's biggest L frames.
The other ones are looking good though. Hopefully, we'll talk about the Brewers later. But
so next up is the Oakland A's, and they get a B from me. They ultimately trade Frankie Montas and Lou Trevino, and they get Ken Waldichuk, Luis Medina, JP Sears, and Cooper Bowman. They also trade Christian Betancourt to the Rays for Cal Stevenson, as well as a few other very small moves. They also traded, what was it, Austin Allen for Carlos Guarate. Couldn't tell you much on either of those guys.
Hey, man, I watched Guarate shove for 5 starts in Fort Wayne last year. He's not
crazy,
that good.
Jack.
So
You're crazy that you know who that is.
They get a B.
Awesome,
they get a B because, look, I think they could have done better on the Montas trade. And we've talked about, we don't know exactly what the value was clearly or what other offers there were, but maybe they should have traded him sooner. You know, why were they holding on to him? We've had trade rumors going on from the beginning of the year, right? And they said they wanted to hold on to him. Did he really do anything to boost his trade value? Probably not, especially with the injury issues. I think you always take the bird in hand. You trade your pitcher when the offers come in. I'd like to imagine that they would have had a better offer than Ken Waldichuk and Luis Medina and 2 others at the earlier parts of the season. And they also packaged like a reliever who's not a negative value, right? So I think it was okay. They did what they needed to do, but I'm not going to give them an A for that because they didn't really make a monumental change to their system with that.
I thought you were being way too nice to him. I would have given him like a C minus, maybe even a C, maybe. Like I was like maybe D plus or C minus, but maybe C. They didn't give up Sean Murphy, who they could have gotten a bunch for. They didn't give up Ramon Laureano, who isn't really going to factor into their plans and already looks to kind of be declining. I mean, I just watched him yesterday. He just made this terrible route in right field, missed a ball that just doesn't look like Ramon Laureano. They could have done a lot more, similar to some teams that we really got on, and they lost the Montas trade. I think we're all in agreement there. I think they did way shittier.
Jack, any thoughts?
They sold one of the pieces that needed to go. I wish they just dumped Murphy. I wish they dumped Blackburn. I wish they traded Cole Irvin too. Like, we're going to get to the Reds shortly. The Reds know how to sell at the deadline. The A's did not know how to sell at the deadline.
Like the A's want to pretend that they're competitive, and they like beat Shohei Ohtani yesterday. So they're a hard team to figure out. But
they beat Ohtani.
Yeah,
they might fucking win the AL West.
I know
they beat the Angels. Here's the thing. I don't really understand what they're doing. So I think that perspective makes sense, right? Like they have Shea Langeliers just waiting in the wings, and for whatever reason they don't trade Murphy, who would have brought in a haul. I'm okay with not trading Murphy because he's got multiple years of control and they can run it back next year if they want to, and then trade him at the deadline there. I think it's the same story with Laureano. I think they felt like they were selling low. They had a high asking price. No one met it. He has multiple years of control as well. So I think that's kind of their angle there. None of those guys are expiring. Whereas you talk about like the Cubs, those guys are going to be free agents. So I think they wanted to try to sell higher on those guys this coming season. We'll see if they do it. But I'm just glad they traded Montas. I love Ken Waldichuk, so I gave them a couple bonus points for that. But a B minus probably makes more sense.
I think it's fair.
Who else we got? We got the Texas Rangers. So the Texas Rangers, they're also a weird team, and they get a C from me because I do like the prospect they got. They traded Matt Bush for Antoine Kelly and Mark Mathias. I was surprised that they got Antoine Kelly. He is a really exciting pitching prospect who's battled injuries from the Brewers. 3.86 ERA in 19 starts this season. He's only allowed 60 hits. He's punched out 119 in 91 innings. He's nasty. I was very surprised that the Brewers parted with him. Bush is a good reliever. They don't see him as a long-term piece for them. And I'm okay with the Rangers not really making any trades because the Rangers are clearly keen on being competitive as soon as possible, and they have a lot of pieces starting to come together here. They were trying to call on Luis Castillo. They're trying to do some other things. I'm okay with them standing pat. They get a C because nothing really changed. I would give them a C- if they didn't add a good pitching prospect here because I would have liked them to be a little bit more active. But I don't think you can really knock on the Rangers. They spent $500 million in the offseason. They're not trying to sell off. They didn't have that many expiring assets. I think they did fine.
I have nothing to add. I think it was perfect.
I have nothing to add.
Yeah, I mean the Rangers did exactly that.
All right, after we talked about the Rangers, I think we all three of us just kind of realized that like we already went an hour and we want to give you guys legitimate dialogue in the National League too and try to instead of just trying to like squeeze it in a little bit. So, here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow, Saturday, get up, mimosa, like boozy brunch. Listen to the Just Baseball show talk about the National League trade deadline. That work?
That works for me.
Okay.
Arm?
Works for me. Might have a mimosa while we record.
Holy shit.
I already got my OJ ready to go.
Galaxy brain. Let's go. Yeah, that sounds good to me. All right. So Saturday morning pottage for you guys. We'll do the National League tomorrow. Yeah. I think for me.
I think the main thing about the Just Baseball show is that we like to really dive into the prospects. We like to give you guys the most analysis possible, and we'd rather not short you on it by trying to get the National League in when we could just give you another full hour on the National League, break into all of those divisions. And then on that Saturday episode, we're going to give you the top 5 winners, top 5 losers. It's going to be a banger, 2-part. We ain't done. The only reason that this is now a Saturday episode is because also my computer broke. And I was getting my apartment set up. Hopefully you'll forgive me, and we'll be back tomorrow.
No, don't forgive him. Don't forgive him.
Whatever. I don't care.
And now that you say that, I want to do a speed run of the National League of over 4 minutes. Let's do it. You ready?
15 teams in 4 minutes.
Let's just do the Pirates for the last 20 minutes.
No, I do appreciate, like, this has happened to us a couple times on here. It's also happened to us on the call up where like we say we're going to get through it, and then we end up spending so much time on things that like we could either rush it or do it the right way. And I think people appreciate that. So thank you for bearing with us. And sorry if you were expecting to get all 30, but we're going to give much more insight on all of the teams, as we move forward here. And that's the way you can always expect it.
It's called a cliffhanger. With that,
thank you, everybody.